So Chris, you're going to stick around. Let's talk about what's going on with Alibaba, because it's pretty interesting here. The company is announcing it's going to split into 6 separate units in the biggest restructuring of its 24-year history. The groups range from cloud intelligence to e-commerce, and each will be managed by their own CEO and board, and will have separate IPOs potentially eventually. This comes as the current Alibaba CEO Jack Ma suddenly resurfaced in China after a year-long absence. Chris, sorry to put you on the spot here, but just to give a little bit of background on this, I mean, this seems to be pretty entirely unexpected, right, that this is happening. And it's a $220 billion company, enormous company here. And analysts seem to be saying it's been trading at depressed valuation, so maybe this would help matters. I mean, is this something you've been watching?
So, we have seen companies do spin-offs before to unlock, value. Kellogg's is going through this right now, itself. And I remember, several other companies have tried it in the last few years. And typically it tends to work because you're able to really isolate the value through like a peer valuation, some of the parts valuation, if you will. And it tends to be very positive. I guess the question I would ask is, why now? Right? That's always what's the catalyst to thinking behind this? But I also find it's a little fascinating because if I remember the news this morning, Google is asking for a lawsuit to be dismissed where they're trying to break its ad tech business up into different pieces. So it's quite interesting to me that a Chinese company is doing this while some of our companies are trying to stay together.
Right. Well, at the same time, it's also, if this does, as it is moving forward, what does this mean for the data? Is one customer, one part of the business's customer, versus now having some ties into all of those businesses? And what are the synergies that they might lose out on as a result of this?
That's a wonderful question for the conference call, if there was one, because, I mean, as we know, right, the data is key.
Yeah.
Right? If you control the data, you control the business. So I have no idea, but I think that's a great point, Brad.
Well, then, to broaden it out, of course, the other big factor here is China and the Chinese government and its involvement in the company and the speculation that it had something to do with Jack Ma's vacation after he was critical of the company. And so, just to broaden it out, I'm curious if you're looking at China stocks at all at an interesting place right now, or if it's just something you want to stay away from because there are uncertainties about the relationship between the U.S. and China, about China regulations still. What's your thinking?
So there's direct and indirect ways to play China, right? So, you could buy Chinese stocks. We've always shied away from that in the Action Alerts Plus portfolio. Rather, the reopening of China, I think, is far more interesting. We do have several positions for that, including, Coty, which is, doing very well as luxury demand rebounds. So that's the way that we would play it. And you have to remember, too, that, whenever you deal with international companies, you always have to reconcile the accounting back. So I think it's easier for the average investor, the individual investor, to either do it through, say, ETF vehicles or through ADRs because they file with the SEC.
You don't own Alibaba, but for someone out there who does, and they're reading this news this morning, I mean, what are they to make of this at the end of the day?
I think you need to understand the new structure and exactly what it means, but it's possible opportunity. Like we said before, there are numerous cases in the past when this happens that value gets unlocked. But the question is, as this separation occurs, how many shares are you getting in each business? Is that part of the strategy? And then you have to decide, which of the 6 do you want? Do you want all of them? Do you want some of them? So there's really a lot more questions.
Chris, thanks for playing along on the fly with that
happy to do it.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming and joining us in studio, live and living color. Chris Versace, Tematica Research Chief Investment Officer. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Absolutely.